When you think about the ways in which a company can change and grow, if you're able to change and grow with it, you can create endless opportunities to grow and have impact.
What does it truly mean to lead with integrity, purpose, and impact? In this episode, I sit down with Laysha Ward, a board member, former EVP and Chief External Engagement Officer at Fortune Company Target, and author of the book Lead Like You Mean It. So we dive into the leadership principles that drive meaningful change, the power of authentic relationships, and how today leaders can build influence while staying true to their values. So if you want to elevate your leadership and leave a lasting legacy, believe me, this conversation is one that you can't afford to miss.
Leading with meaning is about operating with integrity, with intention, and with humanity. Trust is earned, not owed. So it's very important for us to ensure, again, that our words and actions are aligned. The things that we're saying, people can see through our behaviors day in and day out.
What's your definition of integrity?
It's operating ethically. It's not only what you say, but it's what you do. There can be enormous learning, growth, and impact when you...
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a new episode of The World Class Leader. I'm super excited, to have with me Laysha Ward. Laysha is an accomplished C-suite executive, and she held numerous roles during nearly 33 years at Target Corporation, a Fortune 50 company with over 100 billion annual revenue. She most recently served as strategic advisor, and prior to that, as executive vice president, chief external engagement officer. And her latest role, Laysha oversaw Target's enterprise-wide approach to engage and deepen cross-sector stakeholder relations to drive positive business and community impact. The stories and lessons in her book, Lead Like You Mean It, Lesson on Integrity and Purpose from the C-Suite, inspire readers to embrace their purpose, make intentional choices, nurture relationships, and champion and sustain themselves and others. In 2008, President Bush nominated and the U.S. Senate confirmed Laysha as a member of the board of directors of the Corporation for National Community Service, the national largest grant maker for volunteering and service. Under the Obama administration, she served as well as a board chair. She's a member of many different communities. If I pick one or two, the Executive Leadership Council, Black women on boards and women corporate directors in Tampa Bay, and she served as well as a nonprofit board and the Minnesota Orchestra and the Northside Achievement Zone, as well as the board of Minnesota Sports and Events and the for-profit boards of Denny's Corporation and, you guess what, United Airlines Holdings. So, Laysha, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be a part of your community, a very active and engaged community, I might add.
Totally. Well, that was a great addition. And speaking of which, when I presented to my LinkedIn community that I was going to have you here as a guest, I got so many people, by the way, and kudos to you. So many people say, Laysha is one of the most inspiring leaders I know. I've been following her. I have so many questions to ask. And unfortunately, I cannot answer or ask you to answer all of these questions, but I'll try to pick one or two that to me probably are more interesting. And I will probably start with this. Well, number one is people want to know your story. So in your story in a nutshell, and I really would like to start with the question someone asked us, how can you stay in the same company for over 30 years in a current timeline and world? That sounds like incredible achievements. Tell me more about that.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll kind of combine those two questions, right? A little bit about my origin story, and then we'll jump into how does one stay with one company for nearly 33 years? It's a great question. I grew up in a very small rural community in Indiana, a town of only 700 people, a cornfield on one side of our house, a soybean field on the other, dirt road that got a little gravel, that got a little tar, almost paved. And I went to Head Start, which is an early childhood education program for low-income students. And I was also the only Black student in my class from first grade through graduating from high school, right?
Oh, wow.
Just not the most likely path to the C-suite in corporate America. And yet I was able to, do amazing things that I'm quite grateful for and continue to use the things that I've learned throughout my life and apply them on my life and leadership journey, which is pretty amazing. I often describe my style as C-suite meets street suite. And that really is all about trying to be, quite frankly, authentic and relatable in service of my purpose. And being accessible and vulnerable, I think, is an important part of my leadership style and journey as well. So a little bit about me. And in the book, I do talk a bit about how my humble beginnings, my origin story, including some of the things that I wasn't always excited to share, that I considered in some ways a curse or not my strengths, ultimately became my superpowers. And I talk about it in terms of how we might spin our roots into gold. Very important to think about what are our strengths and how might things that we think are deficits become assets instead. And then pivoting to the question about how in the world does someone spend nearly 33 years at the same company? That is rare these days. I know that. And in fact, with many of the young people in particular that I talk to today, they think I'm insane. They're often moving every 2 to 3 years into different companies or organizations. But what I would say to them and do say to them is that I continued to learn and grow and have developmental learning experiences that allowed me to have impact that were aligned with my purpose over the course of those 33 years. And given the way in which the world changed and the way in which the company that I was a part of changed, it felt like I was a part of an evolving set of companies in a way, right? So I started out with a department store division that we owned initially, and we ultimately sold that department store division. We also had a mid-tier retail company called Mervyn's California that we did ultimately sell. And then there was the Target brand that I worked for as well. And so I worked for all three of those brands, was a part of the team that ultimately sold off a couple of those brands,
right,
and continued to be a key player in helping Target grow to the juggernaut that it's become. When I first joined the company, it was
way smaller than what
$9
is now.
billion company. So you're absolutely right, Andrea.
Crazy.
It was a $9 billion organization. And by the time I left, it was over $100 billion company with over 450,000 employees, which we call team members, thousands of vendor partners and community partners, and lots of shareholders. And so when you think about the ways in which a company can change and grow, if you're able to change and grow with it, you can create endless opportunities to grow and have impact even within the same organization. And so I do challenge folks to say, are there different parts of the company that you can be a part of, different learning and developmental experiences that you can be a part of that allow you to make that organization remain a fit? And if it's not, then certainly continue to explore things outside of your organization, but don't just assume that that can't happen internally as well.
Yeah, that's so brilliant. And I mean, my takeaway from what you just shared, I think is one is there are companies inside of the companies.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
that's to me, I think it's a good way of framing, an experience today, meaning you don't really necessarily need to change, or move from one company to another, as long as, of course, you are happy where you are. But because there are so many things changing and happening in one single organization, especially at that size, that
Yep.
will create essentially different kind of a career experiences along the way that goes beyond
Absolutely.
the job title, right?
And even those who have an entrepreneurial spirit, when you are with a company that is growing and scaling, you can find ways to kind of bring that, what I call entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
inside of a large organization. And that allows you to, again, build different skills and competencies. I recall when I first started with Target, for example, the food and beverage business was tiny. And to
Mm.
see where that business has grown over time, again, creates so many possibilities, or the size of the beauty business and back then versus where the size of beauty business is, or even where the stores are located, for example. The number of, urban markets, for example, that didn't have a Target that grew to have one over time, created lots of developmental jobs and experiences for people, whether that was in real estate and property development or in marketing or in different product categories. That was an opportunity to find newness in terms of, people's professional aspirations that, didn't just have to happen outside of the organization, but they could find internally. Now,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that you don't want to go outside. I do think too, for organizations to give people, if they do go outside of the company and get a different worldview, and I've seen people do that, to invite them back in because they've gotten fresh perspective and a different kind of experience. I think back in the day, if people left, a company, they were kind of persona non grata. And it was difficult to bring them back into the organization. But I do see today with many companies, if people do take, some time away from the organization, but can bring the skills that they've learned through that experience and apply it effectively inside of the organization, that can be, again, another great way for them to develop and for the company to benefit from that new experience that they've had.
Yeah, agreed. And to me, I think that is really how really selecting the right people, right talent based on the current situation and current phase of any company. So to me, make totally sense. And also the second takeaway from what you said is all about your learning agility, always looking for something to learn in whatever
We
your the work
have
has.
to be lifelong learners. I think that
Yeah,
has certainly been
exactly.
one of my secrets to success, is having a growth mindset, being focused on lifelong learning and adapting. Adaptive leadership is obviously so important, and I think an important component of leading with meaning. The core tenets, obviously, of leading with meaning is making sure that we are embracing our purpose and acting from our purpose, which I think is so foundational, but certainly making sure that we're making intentional choices. One of those about being a lifelong learner, nurturing relationships, and really making sure that we are, not only championing and advocating for ourselves, but doing the same for others and being of service.
Yeah, and on that note, after so many years working in corporate, in business, now you realize that it was a time to bring all your learning into a book, right? So, and that's to me is the most exciting thing about writing a book, is when you can collect your own personal experience. There you go. So for those that are watching on YouTube, Leisha just showing us the cover of a wonderful book called Lead Like You Mean It. Tell me a little bit more, to the audience as well. What's the philosophy about the book? Why is so important? Why is critical? Why did you decide to write it?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we all want to be happy and healthy. We want to be financially secure and to do meaningful work. We want to lead a life that's filled with purpose.
Yeah.
And Lead Like You Mean It really does offer steps and tools that help us all lead with meaning. And it's not just for executives, it's for everyone. And I believe that we should be taking a holistic approach to our lives and careers. And that approach really does ask us to make intentional choices, what we'll say yes to and what we'll say no to, really prioritizing. I call it the strategic yes and the strategic no. And leading with meaning is about operating with integrity, with intention, and with humanity. You're operating ethically. And I think it's so important for us to be acting from our purpose. You know, what is your why? What is your reason for being? What do you feel called to do at work and in the world? Incredibly important and foundational for everything else that you're going to do. I believe that your personal purpose statement becomes a lantern, right, that helps light and guide the way for you, but it's also a measuring stick that holds you accountable to making progress. And so often I think our, sort of mindset is to know the purpose of the organization that we work for or with, but we haven't necessarily defined rather our own purpose
No,
statement,
totally.
and really making sure that those things are aligned or at the very least not at odds is essential to our life and career success. And so I wrote that to, ideally to share some of the lessons that can be applied by others, right? To help others live and lead in a way that allows them to be the best versions of themselves and help others do the same.
So let me unpack a few things that you shared because they are interesting to me, but I'm sure interesting for the audience. First of all, what's your definition of integrity?
It's operating ethically, right? It's not only what you say, but it's what you do. And that, again, operating from a source of truth
Hmm.
and operating ethically is so foundational, I think, to being a trusted leader. Like, trust is foundational to ensuring that you're able to lead teams effectively, build collaborative relationships and partnerships that lead to successful outcomes, both in our lives and our career.
Agreed. And to me, from my personal experience, I mean, there is no performance without integrity. So integrity is the number one foundation for results. And at any level, it's not just, as you said, at the company level, but also for ourselves. And talking about,
And what I would say, though, to that, Andrea, is trust is earned, not owed.
Yeah.
So it's very important for us to ensure, again, that our words and actions are aligned. The things that
Yes.
we're saying, people can see through our behaviors day in and day out. And if there is misalignment, that we're willing to be open to learning, growing, evolving, if appropriate, saying we're sorry and then applying those learnings. I mean, we're all human. We're going to make mistakes. Mistakes, in fact, are an important part of learning, but it's how we apply those learnings going forward that is key and that allow us to maintain and, if required, rebuild trust.
Yeah. So one thing that I know is important for you, is the prep work. I mean, the self work that you need to do before developing your own personal purpose statement, which I think it's something I totally agree that is pivotal for our success as an individuals. And yet, many people, by the way, most of the time, even very top leaders, they really struggle to answer that question. What's your purpose in life? So, how people should really be able to create a personal purpose? That's interesting, of course, to hear what's your personal purpose.
I love that you asked about this idea of doing self work first, because so often we don't invest in ourselves, which I think is so critical. Self work is really essential for our success in our lives and career. And, one of the things I often ask people that I mentor and sponsor is, do you believe in yourself? Right. And you would think that they could very quickly and easily say, yes, of course I believe myself. But they often stumble over that. And who better to bet on and believe in than you? Right. And it's not just believing in you, it's making sure that you know who you are deep down and that you're showing up for yourself. And what I mean by that is that you're able to tell your story with confidence and that you're standing in your power and that you're focused on your overall well being. You know, it's hard to take care of others if you haven't first started by taking care of and doing the self work required on yourself. We're more effective leaders when we're able to do that, I believe. And then once you've done that self work, you're better centered and positioned to effectively define what your personal purpose statement is. And that's so essential. In the book, I, provide some, questions that I think the reader can use to start to identify their personal purpose statement and some other inspiring examples, because my purpose will be quite different than yours, Andrea. And that's the magic of it. But things like, what do I want to do? What impact do I want to make? On what audience do I want to make that impact? Are the places where I want to spend my time and energy aligned with that? And answering these questions isn't always easy, but it's important to answer them, to write them down, to make them memorable, to make them sticky, and ensure that they're not just a slogan, right? Not just on the walls, but as I say, in the halls, something that you can live out on a daily basis through your actions, big and small. And that you take partners in doing so. I think my purpose, which is to be of service, and I've been able to be of service in all spheres of my life, not only because I have articulated that, but I share it. I've named it and I've claimed it, and I've shared that with others in my life so that they can be accountability partners for me, really help me on that journey, and perhaps even fill in some gaps that might exist as I'm trying to live out my purpose. But that purpose statement has been fundamental to helping me make key decisions about what I, again, want to do or won't do in my life and career that I hope that people will take the time to do. And in fact, I partner with a global leadership development company called Adeption. And they help me with the reflection questions that are throughout the book, because my goal is not just to share stories about my life and leadership journey to sort of make myself look good and or bad, because I share some things that are quite vulnerable,
Right.
mistakes I've made, but it's really done to be of service to a reader. How might they reflect on the application in their own life and career? And so they're very simple questions. And in addition to that, on my website, this community can go and you'll see a link that says Adeption. And there are some incremental, free, exclusive developmental tools that this community can take advantage of that will really help them do an even deeper dive in writing their personal purpose statement, informing their kitchen cabinet, which is their personal and professional board of directors, and thinking through their strategic yes and strategic no. Because again, this book is about how might I help the reader, the community, be their best and do their best. And the book and these tools, I think, will be a step on that journey.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And you made me think about, I really love the fact that you said, sometimes we have our own gaps, meaning we started to notice that what is our purpose, even if it's clear. So, but that's the intention that, every day we should really act according to. But then the reality is we show up differently. We don't behave as we should. We're not, in other words, integral to whatever is the purpose that we create. I think to me it's great because if you have the level of self-awareness about yourself, you can
Yep.
really point into this gap and say, okay, today I'm not really showing
Yeah.
up as I should based on the purpose I have. But without purpose, there can be integrity because you can go in so many different
And I
directions.
love what you've said there, Andrea, because I think what you're hitting on is something that I do speak about in the book, but have spoke about my entire career, which is we're human. And it is not about being perfect. It's about making progress, right? Progress over perfection is the goal. And people who tell you they're perfect are not telling the truth. I'm just telling you, right? And that's just, life and lifing is that we'll have successes, we hope, more than not. But that, again, we'll make some mistakes or we'll, go off track, but it's how you can course correct and get back on track that matters. And I think that personal purpose allows us to adapt if required and get back on track. But give yourself some grace. None of us is ever going to be perfect, but it's, being self-aware and learning along the way and then doing our very best to continue to grow and get better, right? You test, learn, fail, iterate. Test, learn, fail, iterate is the way that I've tried to approach it.
I think it's a perfect framework for the conversation we just had. And by the way, my personal purpose is leaving an extraordinary legacy. And what I've been trying to do is operating always from that because they give me access to something more powerful in a way how we also show up with people. So
I love your purpose around leaving a legacy, and that is very integral to what the reader will also get out of Lead Like You Mean It, right? This is not just about you taking, it is about you giving and giving more than you're getting and trying to leave people and things better off than you found them is such an essential part of leading with meaning.
yeah, and is a basic of extraordinary leadership. So definitely agree with you. So if we move, a little bit forward in the book, so after the first part, which is primarily about the purpose, as we discussed, the other big chapter, big area of your book is about relationship, nurturing relationship, and I know that how it's been critical for you. Can you shed some lights about what does it mean? And I have my personal view about them. I'm really curious, interesting to hear what does it mean nurture a relationship these days.
I'm happy to share my perspective, but would also love to hear a bit more about your perspective. This is, a conversation we're
Yes.
learning and growing together. But I do believe that relationships are essential to our success and joy in our lives and our careers. And, leading with meaning is all about nurturing relationships with a variety of people from different backgrounds. And I think when you're, leading with meaning, nurturing relationships, these relationships can also help us with issues like burnout, with isolation, and with disengagement. And so, some of the things I really encourage people to do is to form their kitchen cabinet, which is what I say when I talk about building your personal and professional board of directors or advisors who are there to help guide you. And then you need to stock that kitchen cabinet with people with varied types of expertise and experience. And that can range from the people who you might call your cheerleaders, who are in your hype squad, that are, really there to celebrate you during your victories and comfort you in defeat, to the folks who are challengers, who are really giving you tough love and are pushing you towards your growth. So important to have people in that kitchen cabinet who don't just look like you, act like you, talk like you, and think like you. So a wide range of experiences and perspectives are really critical in that kitchen cabinet. And I would say making the time to develop that kitchen cabinet, which in my opinion shouldn't be about quantity, but quality,
Yes.
is an investment in you, and you're worth it. And your ability then to champion others, which is an important part of leading with meaning, is a way for you to pay that forward. Really, really crucial and important.
Yeah. Oh, look, you hit the nail, on this. And the reason why I said at the beginning, when we're about to approach this part of the conversation was what's my personal view, and it's not different than yours. Actually, I'm building on your point to the extent that one, for example, here we created, a number of events and roundtables and mastermind, if you like, for CEOs to start really creating this powerful inner circle of people that think like you but have a different insight, and sharing and start learning from each other. But also because what I notice in my corporate career, even now as a coach, there are so many amazing leaders that have zero relationship outside their own company.
Correct.
They became so entrenched
Too
inside of the
insular,
com.
right? They became too
Totally,
insular. Yeah.
totally. And by the way, that's not maybe the experience in Target, but there are so many organizations they already built in silos. So imagine living only in one single company and maybe also living in one single silos inside the company. You're losing such a great opportunity to learn and get inspired by others externally. So to me, it's one of the most important things. And again, many people, many leaders fail to see that way only until they find they have a need because they need to take instead of giving, which was back to your point.
But I love this idea. You need to, again, back to this growth mindset, this ability to see varied perspectives, a fresh approach, to have the right sort of data analytics and insights, competitive analysis that keeps you fresh and sharp. Again, both in your life and your career is so essential. And you almost get stuck in the status quo if you're not able to expand your circle and expand your worldview. So finding ways that you can continue to get insights, trends, analysis, competitive research is just essential, I think, to our growth and success. And finding partners that you can learn from who bring you different points of view is one way to do that, but essential so that you don't get caught in the we've got it all figured out, or you believe the headlines that say that you are the best and the brightest. And then the next thing you know, one of your competitors are eating you for lunch.
Yes. So talking about meaningful relationship in your life, tell me
One more
more.
thing, I guess,
Sure.
one more thing I'd love to share though, because you hit on this, Andrea, and very astute point. You're a coach, and so you hear this often, particularly for the most senior leaders, reminding them that they are human too. They are people too.
Yes.
CEOs, C-suite executives, they need these nurturing relationships just like everyone else. And I think there's something in the psyche of how we got raised as corporate execs that, sort of it's lonely at the top, or this go it aloneness mindset that is just not true. I think we all get better together, and that our success really does come from developing a diverse, high performing team where we can all bring our very best, do our very best, and ultimately achieve sustainable impact and results as a result of our shared strengths, our shared purpose, not acting in a way that suggests that any one person has to have it all figured out, because I just don't think that's where you get the best high performing teams and the best high performing results over time.
Oh, totally. Reality, though, is there are many leaders they perceive themselves or someone perceived, so they build that sort of expectation on them. Is like they need to act like the Superman or Superwoman, where there are one person in charge with all the power, with all the influence, with all the great or right decisions to be made, versus it's total. We're living in a totally different world. And again, your point, I think, Leisha, is so well made. Let's go back to humanity 101. Yes, we humans, we, by the way, even organization, we succeed when the human systems work, not when the non-human systems actually excel. So I think that is important for people to understand.
And a lot of that happens through great cultures, don't you think,
Yeah.
Andrea?
Oh,
Like,
totally.
like I just feel so strongly that a great company or organization is driven by a strong culture, right? The norms, the behaviors, the ways in which the team and a leader is operating really does fuel delivering a successful strategy and goals and results. And to have a team that's deeply engaged is really about having a strong culture. And I do spend a little time in the book talking about culture, right? A culture of what I call care plus, a culture of learning, and a culture of trust, so that all of us can be our best because you know your why, you know your what, and you know the how it's all going to happen. And culture is just essential, I think, for, again, a successful company and for a successful leader to have folks who will want to lead not only with them, but alongside them, particularly in challenging times.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And, speaking about challenging times, one of the most of people going back to the LinkedIn post that, I posted before getting you on the show, many people ask me this question. That to me is a brilliant question. Based on your experience, just now on the topic you mentioned about during tough times and dealing during these moments, which by the way, for many leaders is kind of a normal these days, given the level of uncertainty and
Yeah,
challenges that companies are facing. One of the questions that most people ask was, how can you deal with the balance of being stay true authentic to yourself, to your values, and all the reckless decision as a leader you have to make, or during the tough times that we're living when we don't have the level of certainty again, or where the pressure is so high? How can you stay true to yourself?
that's a great question. After working in a corporate environment, consumer facing company for nearly 33 years, I would say I've seen a lot of change and disruption and uncertainty over that time horizon, lots of cycles, and have been able to lead through those cycles. And I would say, even when things may feel like a crisis, out of crisis can come opportunity. So it's being very grounded again in the purpose of the organization, but my own personal purpose. How do those things come together? How might I reframe the crisis as an opportunity? For me, I believe that tough times will pass, but
Mm,
tough people will remain. Right?
right.
So I just feel like I'm built for these difficult moments, and this too shall pass, as my grandmother would say. But what about this moment can I do to ensure that we are optimizing this moment and opportunity? And one of the things I try to do beyond the purpose alignment that I mentioned is being, really clear on the problem we need to solve in this moment and over time. So, can I have both a short term and a long term view and understand what needs to be accomplished immediately versus what needs to happen perhaps over a different time horizon? And I think about these moments of uncertainty by saying, you know what? I can't guarantee certainty, right? Like, let's just be transparent during moments of uncertainty. But what I can offer as a leader is clarity, right?
Yes.
And I can give you clarity around here's the problem we're still trying to solve. Here are the resources that we have in this moment to apply. Here are my expectations around the culture and the behaviors that I expect. That, like, you don't get to just dump our culture and behaviors because we're in the middle of uncertainty. Here's how I still expect us to operate, and clarity around here's what we still hope to deliver relative to results, which perhaps maybe have pivoted a bit given the nature of the uncertain environment that we're in. So if you can be very transparent and honest about the difference between can't offer you certainty and I'm not going to pretend like I can, but clarity I can. And often in these moments, I recommend communicating with more frequency because in the absence of a narrative that you as a leader can provide, even if it's I'm going to tell you what I know and what I can at this moment, and it's not going to be everything, it's not going to be purpose perfect, but it's going to be what I know now and what we need to continue to move forward. And when I know more, that I can share, because there may be elements
Yeah, of course.
based on confidentiality or a variety of circumstances that you can't share every single thing. But what I can share, I will share. So again, there is alignment throughout the organization about what we're facing and how we are going to work together to move through that so that we can be successful together.
Love it. Love it. Certainty is not what you can do, but clarity is what you can actually do during
Correct.
uncertain times. So I think it's a fantastic
Correct.
framing
Right.
and
And
a
the other
mindset.
thing I would say during times of uncertainty as well, that I just really would encourage people to stay grounded in, Andrea, is the importance of their overall well being. And you may be like, oh gosh, it's leadership. Why are we talking about this? It is so foundational. If we don't have our health and well being, everything else, is more difficult and doesn't matter as much, quite frankly. So, to be thinking holistically, particularly during these challenging times when you're likely under more stress, about your overall well being is a very important investment. We used to talk about the corporate athlete. What are you doing to take care of yourself so that you're positioned to take care of others? And that's your physical well-being, your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being, community, like that's the folks you're surrounded with, and your financial well-being.
Yeah.
All of these things are critical for you to be thinking about so that they aren't distractions in a way, particularly during times of uncertainty that might make it more difficult for you to be centered and successful in your life and career.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think that is such a powerful reminder. Also, I can tell you, Laysha, so people here, even important CEOs, they came here, admitting how they overlook their health, for example, for most of their career, and then they pay the price, and now
Yes,
they regret it.
exactly.
So I think it's a conversation now that needs to be inside of a leadership conversation, because it's not separated. It's the same conversation. It's really the
Well,
same conversation.
and I think some of that comes back to this idea. Early in my career, we were taught, we can do it all, that it was about showing how strong we were. And we are human. And I think our ability to ask for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. And it allows us to be our best and do our best. And that vulnerability as a leader, I think, makes it possible for our teams to see us as more human, more relatable, and something that they too can aspire to and would want to aspire to when they see us being fully human.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. I want to cover another part, which we were pointing to a little bit earlier in terms of relationships, people that really influence our life, right? And for you, so interesting, and because you talk about this in the book, there are people that really have shaped who you are. They change. It sounds like your attitude about leadership, about the meaning, about integrity, purpose, and there is someone that we most of us admire that you had incredible encountering, and she said, as long as I'm here, I will be of use. Can you tell the audience what was that experience and who else has influenced your life?
Certainly, because I wasn't sure like who you were going to refer to. I was listening very intensely to see what direction you were
I
going
want to make
to
sure you
go in.
remember every single part of your book.
Yeah, you're making sure I'm present and paying attention. Well
Exactly.
done. Well done. I've been fortunate to have many people who have influenced me throughout my life and career. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my parents. They were foundational to my learning journey and foundational in particular to my belief and desire to be of service. We were from humble beginnings, very limited means, but they always challenge us to be of service and to give back, and that we could do that regardless of our circumstances.
Yes.
And so shout out to Gloria and my mother and my late father, Eugene Ward, who passed away just a couple of years ago.
Sorry.
And I would also say my husband, Bill Kiffmeyer. Not everyone is going to have a life partner. That's a personal choice that each of us has to make. But I would say in a leadership book, I think it's important to remind people that choice matters. Your life partner can either help accelerate your purpose and impact, or they can hinder it. So
Totally.
choose wisely is what I'd say there. And nurture that relationship in ways that you would nurture others. And there's a really interesting story I might add about that towards the end of the book under a subsection called Love and Resilience Matter. That's all I'll say, a little teaser for that. And I would then maybe pivot to the professional side of the house a bit and say many people impacted my life and career. Mrs. Coretta Scott King, the wife of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was someone who was instrumental to helping me refine my purpose and my life and career goals. And there's a lovely story about a couple of lessons that she provided in the book. And the person who you referenced, as long as I am here, I will be of use, did as well. And that was Dr. Maya Angelou, an incredible writer, leader, poet, activist. Early in my career, I had the opportunity to interview her for a work project. And we were able to go to her home in Winston-Salem. And while I thought we would have a big name journalist interview her, think Barbara Walters or Oprah Winfrey, we were on a very tight budget. And as a result of that, my boss said, "Guess who's going to do the interview?" And I was like, "Who?" He said, "You." I was like, "Okay." And I was a bit petrified, if I'm being candid, but also excited about the opportunity to step up and interview such an incredible icon. And her lessons and stories were going to be shared not only in a magazine, but also with students as a part of a curriculum that we were developing and sharing. And while there, I was impressed by her ability to welcome the entire team into her home and put us at ease. And she knew that we were nervous to be in her presence, and yet we wanted to do an incredible job. And I just love the way she spent time getting to know us, sharing a bit more about who she was. This was before the actual interview. So it was a reminder to me, how do you create a safe and welcoming space where people do feel included and set up for success, was one of the lessons. But of the many things that she shared throughout our time together, the 11 words, "As long as I am here, I will be of use," were the ones that really stuck with me. And I went back afterwards. We transcribed the recorded interview, and I still have the transcript, by the way. And that was many,
Nice.
many years ago. And I remember I circled those 11 words. And why they stuck with me, Andrea, was because they were speaking to my purpose to be of
Yes.
service.
Yes.
Right. And she went on to say, it wasn't just about being of service on like MLK Day or your company sponsored volunteer day. There were ways to be of service throughout your entire life and career, regardless of your position and role. And so it had me thinking about, even in my role in retail at the time, how I was set up to be of service to our guest, which was what we called the customer. How was I being of service to our team, which was what we called our employees? How was I set up to be of service to the community in which we were operating the business, or the partners that we did that work with, like our vendor partners? How was I set up to be of service to the shareholders who had an expectation on the return that they would receive as well? And so it really did help me crystallize the importance for me of being of service, and how that act of being of service might play out across different segments in a very meaningful and real way. So as long as I am here, I will be of use, is an articulation, I think, about servant leadership,
It is.
that I thought was just beautifully and poetically shared.
So powerful. And knowing from reading, her work, I think that is really resonated. It so resonated with the power of the words that she used to use. She used to use. So, and by the way, it sounds like it's been incredible and kind of game changing
Oh,
experience,
for
which
sure.
I
For
think
sure.
it's something that shape your life and your
No
experience.
matter what. And I
Exactly.
had another, I think one of the things I would share with the community too is sometimes there are what I call unusual suspects, like the people who maybe you don't think are going to provide the sort of insights and
Yeah.
input to your career. So also staying open to who those relationships might be is really important. And early in my career, when I moved from Chicago to Minneapolis and took on a role for our corporate responsibility team and the Target Foundation, one of the founding members of the company, back then it was the Dayton Hudson Corporation, the Dayton's family, long storied family with helping found the company and see it grow. When I moved to Minneapolis, one of those founding family members, who had run the business for a number of years but no longer was, sent me a personal note and a book about business and corporate responsibility. And I thought, wow, it's both an honor to receive the book and the note, but also was a little daunting, wondering if this was in some ways a way to say, like, don't mess up the family legacy too. Like, kid, don't screw this up. And so I did write back and, thank Bruce Dayton for that lovely note. And he wrote back. And I thought, uh-oh, here we go. Now now there's an exchange going. And in that next note, he asked me to join him at the Minneapolis Club, a very storied club in the Twin Cities that I had never been in, didn't even think was a place I should be in. And I will never forget, one, being nervous, and wondering if I was going to get quizzed and, challenged on what I was doing next and second guessed and the like. But instead, he wanted to get to know me better. He was great about sharing a bit more about his personal story. And he wanted me to also be in that space so that I knew I belonged there.
Yeah.
He was very intentional about saying, this is a place for you too. And that my goal here is not to second guess what you're going to do in this new role, but it is to ensure that you know that I am rooting for you, that I believe in you, and that I am excited about this next chapter in the work that you are here to lead, and that we will be able to learn and grow from one another. And so I am so glad that I was open to that possibility, that he was open to that possibility. And we then continued to meet on an annual basis at that club and talked in between. If there were big things going on in the company or in life, I was actually aligned and assigned with connecting with him so that he was up to speed on what was happening with the company. And we did that long into his life and mine, in that when he was not doing well from a health standpoint and his health was waning, I got approval from his family, Andrea, to continue that meeting in his home.
Wow.
Where we continued to connect with one another and support one another, not just professionally, but personally. So just be open at the crossroads is the message I'm trying to share. And when I talk about don't just surround yourself with people who look like you, talk like you, act like you, or think like you, there can be enormous learning, growth, and impact when you open yourself up to the possibility of who those transformative relationships or touchstones in your life might be.
What a powerful way to end our conversation, Laysha. I mean, that was such an incredible message. Now, for those in the audience, what you heard today is just a snapshot of so many pieces of wisdom and lessons that Laysha shared in her latest book. So, League Like You Mean It, Lesson on Integrity and Purpose from the C-Suite. Laysha, where people should go if they know more about you, and of course, then buy the book.
Yes. And not only you can buy the book, you can also listen to the audiobook, which I personally recorded. So quite a learning experience there too. And certainly feel free to check out my website at laysaward.com.
Amazing. So Laysha, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
I had a huge expectation and you, of course, delivered. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
I appreciate it. You've been fantastic. And I look forward to staying in touch with you as well.